Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the show. So glad to have you guys in. I am going to be giving you guys a list of must-own wide receivers in this video. And these are not guys going at the top of ADP. These are guys that are going a little bit later, sometimes the middle rounds, sometimes even the late rounds, and they are absolute steals. People aren't drafting them as early as they should be, so I'm going to make sure that you grab these guys because the value is just too good to pass up. But real quick, I have an announcement. I am going to be doing Sunday morning live streams this season on my Patreon. So if you want to go over to my Patreon, I have the link in the description below. If you have whatever fantasy football question you have on Sunday morning, I can answer it in my Sunday morning live streams in the chat. It's going to be a very interactive experience where you can come in and ask me any amount of fantasy football questions. I will get back to you immediately on the live stream and make sure that your lineup is set properly going into lock before the games kick off on Sunday. So that's going to be something I'm doing on my Patreon this year. Click the link, join the Patreon below, help support the channel. All right, I'm going to get in right here with my first wide receiver on my list, and that is Cooper Kupp. Now, this is a guy who has a 1,900-plus yard receiving season with Matthew Stafford under his belt. He obviously had that freakish 2021 season. And then really over the past two seasons, he's been hurt. 2022, he was absolutely dominant, but then he got hurt in the second half of the year. Last year, he was pretty much banged up all season. Even when he was on the field, he wasn't nearly 100%. It was obvious in his play. But this year, Cooper Kupp is healthy. Puka Nacua is the one who's a little bit banged up with his knee. I personally think that both of these wide receivers are going to dominate. But if you look at the value for the wide receivers, Cooper Kupp is the better value. You have to take Puka Nacua in round 1, whereas you could take Cooper Kupp in round 3. And depending on your format, round 4. Underdog, he's pretty much crept up to round 2. I've been getting him tons of shares of him all off season in round 4, and now he's crept up to round 2. So I stole so much value off the board in underdog drafts early this season, taking Cooper Kupp in round 4. Next player on my list is going to be Amari Cooper. Now, this is a dude who quietly had his best receiving yard season that he ever had in his entire career last season, 1,250 receiving yards. If you look at the air yard share, this dude was an air yard monster last season. 42.4% air yard share, 4th in the league. This dude was absolutely dominating air yards in his offense, and he pretty much put together all of this production without Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson was out by week 6. They had Joe Flacco playing most of the time after that, and Amari Cooper put up these numbers with Joe Flacco. Deshaun Watson is better than Joe Flacco. I don't care what anybody says. Everyone's kind of ripping on Deshaun Watson, but the fact of the matter is he hasn't been healthy. This quarterback-wide receiver connection is going to be very dynamic. I'm very excited for the combination of Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. And last year, for best ball formats, you saw what kind of weekly ceiling he provides because he had that game where he had darn near 300 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and just absolutely went nuclear. So he's got that insanely high weekly ceiling because of his elite talent and his ability to get open downfield. And he is a receiver that is usually going to give you a guaranteed 1,000 receiving yard season. This dude has a good floor, an elite ceiling, and you can get him in round 5 in a lot of formats. This dude is a massive steal. Most of the time on underdog, you're going to get him in round 4. Either way, great value. Next player on my list is going to be Terry McLaurin. Now, Terry McLaurin has never finished in the top 20 wide receivers in fantasy points per game. So it's actually kind of hard to make a case for him being a must-own wide receiver. And I've been telling people to avoid Terry McLaurin every season, and I've been right. And, I was just sure about it. I was positive because he didn't have a quarterback. But I think this is the year. I think this is the year where Terry McLaurin finally breaks out and his talent is kind of fully on display, guys. This is one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, he really is. Now, his statistics are not going to show that. But if you watch enough football, the eye test will show you that. You can see that this dude is a tremendous talent. He's just needed a quarterback. He now has Jaden Daniels, who is an incredible pocket passer. I love Terry McLaurin to break out this season, and the opportunity metrics have always been there for him. I mean, he ran 639 routes last year. This dude is running tons of routes and getting target share and opportunity share. He just hasn't had a quarterback that's been able to connect with him. He now has an incredible pocket passer in Jaden Daniels. Look for Terry McLaurin to have his first breakout fantasy season. Next player on my list is going to be Chris Godwin. Now, this is a guy who 3 years in a row, 1,000 receiving yard seasons. He's kind of done it quietly because he hasn't really been a fantasy monster in a while, but we know what kind of ceiling this guy has. We saw it in 2019. That was obviously back when he was playing with Jameis Winston. But you look at the opportunity metrics last year, and they were there. 23.8% target share. This dude is getting fed the ball. He had a 51.2% win rate versus man coverage. So he was absolutely picking apart man coverage. And if you look at Chris Godwin's stats throughout the years, he's notorious for doing this. He's very good in one-on-one situations. He's moving back to the slot this year. He's going to be taking a higher percentage of his snaps from the slot. That's going to be a big improvement from last year, meaning he's going to eat up more receptions. If he outperformed Mike Evans this year, I actually wouldn't be surprised. I think that Chris Godwin has a chance to outperform Mike Evans in this offense. Their target share last year was very similar. It's just that Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans had that connection. Mike Evans is a year older now. Chris Godwin's still more in his prime at age 27. So I like Chris Godwin to have a breakout season this year. I love the fact that he's moving back to the slot, and I think he's going to tear it up. Next and final player on my list is going to be Calvin Ridley. Now, this is a guy who, of all the players that I have on this list, I like the offenses, except for the Bucs. I don't really like the Bucs offense. But the first three players I have on this list, I like their offense. Calvin Ridley, I probably dislike this offense the most from any wide receiver that I have on this list. But I think that Calvin Ridley is going to get by on raw talent, target share, volume, and air yard share, and red zone targets. This dude is notorious for having all of these statistics. You know, you could look back at his season last year. He was 8th in the league in air yards with 1,792. He had 25 red zone targets, which was 3rd in the league. So not only was he getting thrown the ball downfield, not only was he getting a very healthy target share in his offense, he was getting targeted within the red zone like an absolute monster. This dude is going to be a red zone monster this season for this team. Now, will the team be in the red zone a lot? That remains to be seen. But when they are in the red zone, they're going to be looking Calvin Ridley's way. This dude is a red zone target hog. He's a deep threat. And you can trace this all the way back to the 2020 season, his last really full season where he played before he got suspended from the league. He led the league in air yards that year with over 2,000 air yards. This dude is going to get a huge air yard share. If he led the NFL in air yards this year, I wouldn't be surprised because, well, this team's going to be airing the ball out a lot, and Calvin Ridley is notorious for being an air yardage monster. So airing the ball out a lot is always a good recipe when you're Calvin Ridley. So I really think that he's going to get by in this offense, even though the offense will be mediocre with an insane air yard share and getting targeted a lot in the red zone. All right, I appreciate it, guys. Catch you later.